Բարև ձեզ, բարի գալուստ էպիզոդ 24, այսօր super հյուր ունենք Levon Brutyan. So we're gonna speak English. You have raised 34 million, maybe more, I don't know.
I started my first business when I was 15 years old. I did one of the first e-commerce shops for pocket PCs in Russia.
What's happened to the first company?
It's called eBay now.
Yeah. I returned to Yerevan specifically in order to find a co-founder. I'm still trying to understand why, but it didn't happen.
Probably not your selling skills, but probably at that time here people didn't want to take a risk that much.
So I think people in Armenia just don't understand what collection means.
You just like delegating it to the Oriental Gorer and they go and solve the issues. Just
AI vor v zakoni.
We don't do anything. We don't code a line. First sell, and then we learn from the customers whatever they want, whatever the problems they have, and then we decide what we actually gonna build it. Nothing was working, literally. The first person who was really interested was Sam Altman.
Who is Sam Altman? Just kidding.
If a startup does something, there's only one person who should pay for it, and it's the customer.
Can you tell a little bit more? You mentioned like there was entirely different life before VC and after VC.
Business is an exercise about solving daily shit.
Բարև ձեզ, բարի գալուստ էպիզոդ 24, այսօր super հյուր ունենք Levon Brutyan, ով հայերեն հասկանում է, բայց անգլեն ավելի լավ է հասկանում. So we're gonna speak English. Yeah. Levon is an amazing founder. I'll share some things that I know about you, Levon, but you'll give more context, right? I don't know, Levon. We probably met like 10 years ago in Silicon Valley somewhere, right? And then I think you were just starting correctly by that time, or maybe even haven't started yet. And I know that you spent a lot of time in Moscow. That's where you grew up, and then you moved to US, right? And started the company, went through YC. And we talk about YC a lot in this podcast. So you're one of these few Armenian founders that went through YC. And I think like you picked like a very niche, interesting problem related to healthcare payments. That's very interesting, like how you came up with that idea, how you saw that pain. And also I know that you guys have grown, like you have raised 34 million, maybe more, I don't know, so far. And one thing that I know that you did very well is you have nailed the B2B sales, figured out like enterprise sales. That's very, very rare somehow for Armenian founders. So I'm like really, really curious to hear about that experience as well. So welcome, Levon Jan, again. It's exciting to have you here.
Sure. Merci շատ. Hi, ես հայերեն եմ հասկանում եմ մի քիչ, but ավելի լավ է որ անգլերեն եմ խոսում. So a little bit about me. I was born in Moscow. That's my hometown, and I grew up actually in Germany. I spent my first 5 or 6 years in Germany. And then me and my parents, we got back to Russia, and essentially, I started my path after school in law, and I became a lawyer in Russia. But I very fast realized that I don't want to have anything close to being a lawyer. I don't want to deal with this. And I started my first business when I was 15 years old. And essentially, just 2 minutes kind of background. I did one of the first e-commerce shops for pocket PCs in Russia. The pre-iPhone times, you had like the Q-Tech and Asus, with the stylus thing. So that's what we were selling. We grew up rapidly, and then my parents were kind of no, you kind of have to finish your probably education. So maybe it would be better if you just focus on this. And I was like, well, maybe. And I stopped doing that. Then I switched to music. I've been a professional musician for about 10 to 12 years. I used to sing. And then my second business, I was doing a risk management company. So we were basically building.
Levon, sorry for interrupting. So what's happened to the first company? Did it like failed or you did an IPO?
No, it did not fail. Actually, I don't want to sell that I sold it because this was not really a company. This was just a sporadically kind of build up website. And actually, my first wait.
It's called eBay now.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I wish maybe. No, I actually have had a few friends who took it over, and I think it got killed pretty fast, essentially, probably in a year from there. But yeah, no, it's not an eBay, unfortunately. I wish. Um, but I was doing a lot of money, at the age of 15 years old, like that, too much for this. So I think that my parents were actually correct to push me to back to the educational part. Um, then my second company I started when I was 21. We were doing a credit risk management company. It was a franchise of a large German enterprise, and essentially they said, well, that's the logo that you should use. And these are the two things that the company does. End of story. Go find the investors, build the product, do whatever you want. We don't care. And the first product was a debt collection service, and it was a truly automated software-based collection of smaller bills first. And a second product was business credit reports. So if you guys know, probably a lot of us have built something for the iPhone App Store. In order to register, you need a DUNS number. DUNS is essentially is the product of a company called Dun & Bradstreet, and we were a competitor of Dun & Bradstreet in Europe, and I was managing Russia, CIS countries first, and then I kind of grew into more of a regional manager, also taking part of Eastern Europe. So I was doing this for about 6 to 8 years. We've built a lot of interesting IT products. 2009, we were doing machine learning already when, before a lot of people kind of knew the term yet. And this was just interesting. So that was my first moment when I learned how to do, as a founder, enterprise sale, to be honest. And I think that I sold almost personally to about 100 accounts myself. And of course, failed at a bunch of stuff, and learned the hard way. The company survived, but unfortunately, because of some, I would say, external events in 2014 in Russia, as you may understand, with whatever happened to Crimea, I said, you know what, it turns out that probably the company will not grow at the rate that we expect to grow after that, because the majority of our customers were international companies. And that would be a great time for me to relocate to somewhere else, especially to do my MBA, because I actually wanted to learn and to kind of fix some of the mistakes that I've done, and learn how to do it in a better way, which was totally a crazy idea, and probably, this was probably a stupid idea, to be honest. But what I'm happy about is that I ended up living in San Francisco, where me and you actually met for the first time. So we met collectively before everything. I remember that. And at the time, I was just doing my MBA, where I got sick for the first time, went to an American doctor, never got a bill, was sent to collections myself, and just kind of was not happy about the whole experience, to be honest. And I was like, that is so weird. Like the medical practice staff, they forced me to walk into the practice, pay cash, and this was like 2015 probably, end of 2015 in San Francisco. In Russia at the time, Apple Pay was like already everywhere. I could do all kinds of digital payments, everything. I was like, how does it even work here?
Can you explain how the collection works? Like, so what did you go through at that, at the top?
Yeah, sure. So I never got a bill. They actually sent me a letter, like a threatening letter that, if you don't pay the amount by X date, they will be forced to, affect my credit score. They will be forced to probably even go to like a small courts, like small claim courts, and to collect it. And this was a very pushy and very negative experience, obviously. And they didn't want to consider, even from the first initial interaction, that I'm actually willing to make it right from the first attempt. So they were approaching this as if I'm trying to hide from paying and as if I actually don't want to pay, which was very familiar because I've been running this essentially collection service in Russia, and we were doing similarly to all other countries that I observed in the collection space, similar things. And the reason why collection agencies are doing that way is because they don't have data about the consumers at all, and they're forced to apply one major tactics, which is pressure and threatening, in order to get the payment as fast as possible. And when I was going through this medical debt experience, and when I was thinking about why healthcare is such a weird industry in the States, why is it potentially broken? I actually learned that, I got this idea of what will happen if we can stop using one tactics and actually understand consumers better and start applying different tactics to different segments of the population. And because with some people, you need to talk nicely so that they'll pay. With some people, you actually need to put pressure so that they'll pay. But majority of people are actually good people that want to get it resolved as soon as possible, and they do have the money to pay. But this whole industry works extremely inefficiently. When I was doing my research, and this is something that I knew as well from my previous experience, average collection rate, so average amount of money that collection agencies actually collect for their clients is about 10%. So they're leaving 90% of the money on the table, pissing off a bunch of consumers, a bunch of different customers. And there was a Harvard study that showed that in case, people are going through collections experience, 50% of those people never come back. So that should significantly impact the retention, obviously.
Levon, question there. You said they are only able to collect 10%?
Yeah, about 10%. Yeah, 10 to 12%, depending on the country, depending on the type of the debt. But yeah.
What happens to the rest of the money? It's just people don't pay?
Yeah, they don't pay. It's left on the table. People like banks or whoever is the creditor, they will either write it off or forget it or just do nothing. They will wait for the client to return and maybe, to collect it again.
Do they have like actual human collectors as well that go door by door and kind of?
I would say, yeah. I would say that they usually do that, and they usually go through it's all labor driven. It's all labor driven. So they usually have it's a call center type of collections where people just talk. There are a lot of different laws, obviously, that they have to follow. But I'd say that majority of activities are still humanized, or labor driven for sure. So then, what happened then? I finished my MBA, and I actually, which was interesting, I returned from the States, not to Russia, Moscow, where I was originally from, but I returned to Yerevan. And I returned to Yerevan specifically in order to find a co-founder, a technical co-founder, to start building the product. I spent here probably about 3 to 4 months.
Was that your first time in Yerevan? Like,
No, this wasn't my first time. No, I've been to Yerevan in my childhood as well. You know, my parents were kind of bringing me back and forth. Not much, but back and forth still. So I remember this was the late fall of 2015. And then probably Arto, we met back then, maybe even. I think we might have met then back then. And I was actually like actively seeking for a co-founder. And for some reason, it just didn't happen. You know, I really I'm still trying to understand why, but it didn't happen.
yeah, I
And
remember
then,
your frustration.
yeah, yeah.
A lot of frustration.
I think that I was not able to probably just sell, the idea the right way, or something was just didn't work. And I decided to move back to Moscow. And then we actually, me and my existing co-founder, we knew each other for a few years before I left Russia for US. And just through common friends, because we had a few common friends in like managerial teams of Yandex, and especially specifically product teams of Yandex. And honestly, we met again. We very rapidly decided to get started and working together on something, to be honest. So the idea was like interesting, but we said, well, we just excited to get to work with each other. And it took me probably literally like a month in Moscow from my return to Moscow to actually get started on working with something. Yeah, and that's how it all started.
So it's probably not your selling skills, but probably at that time here people didn't want to take a risk that much because you then sold in a month in Moscow to somebody to become a co-founder.
Well, I would say most likely it was a culture difference, my culture difference as well, to be honest, because I'm a look, I'm not from Yerevan, and it's a different culture anyway, right? So I will never blame someone. I think that I didn't do a good enough job, honestly.
Also, I think people in Armenia just don't understand what collection means. There is nothing like that in Armenia, right? It's like to clarify, actually, collection agencies are these agencies that whenever you need to collect your payments and you are not able to collect your payments, you delegate it or outsource it to this agency, and these guys start like calling, yelling on people. You
Yeah,
have
yeah.
Actually, I disagree. I mean, in post-Soviet environment, it's very common.
But at
You
that
can,
time, it was like kicking
yeah,
asses and just getting money. So
exactly. You just
nobody thought it's a hard problem to solve. You just kick
delegate
somebody
it.
and how it's possible they don't give you money
Not
back.
really. I think you're exaggerating. You just like delegating it to the Orenco Gorer, and they go and solve the issues. Just
I
they don't
I
want
I
to.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think this usually, a lot of people were like excited about machine learning back then. This was like a new thing, and I was actually proposing to use these technologies in regards to collections, but collections in general was just had the negative uh, connotation, like negative meaning, and I think that just people like that didn't really want to get involved.
So you're building AI Orenkov Go, really? AI,
Sorry.
AI вор в законе. People are
Uh,
confused.
that's I've never heard this, but yes, I guess there is a way to say that, which is cool. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and then honestly, as for a lot of probably entrepreneurs and like people who start their businesses, super excited how people get into YC. Um, it was a long and winding road for us, to be honest, which was very fun. So when we first decided to work together on this business, me and Max, we started working from Moscow, literally from my apartment, and we started to sell. This was the first thing that we did. We're like, we don't do anything, we don't code a line, we first sell, and then we learn from the customers whatever they want, whatever the problems they have, and then we decide what we actually gonna build it. However, we of course had some, concepts around and like some understanding of what we wanted to do. So nothing was working, literally. Like we've been emailing and LinkedIning and like reaching out to a lot of people in different categories, different industries, different segments, like zero response. And this was so weird. I was like, what the hell? Why isn't it working? Like it should work, at least something. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? Let's do this. I will fly to San Francisco again, and I'll actually start meeting people in person. And I decided to do it. Me and my wife, we flew to SF back, and essentially I started like just talking to people randomly on streets, hitting them with like coffee invites and something like that. And I remember at the time we actually got our first potential prospect, which was Gusto, which was a YC company. And they had a weird problem. And believe it or not, I've tried to do the healthcare originally, and it wasn't working. So I said, well, let's go broad, which was even worse idea probably, but let's go as broad as possible, and let's see how people will react in different industries. So I literally spent all my money on staying in SF again for probably like 2 or 3 months. I didn't have, I had like a couple of thousands of dollars left literally in my pocket after this, because I spent the whole year doing MBA as well. And this was, horribly expensive. And we got this Gusto thing, and there was one other company that I don't remember, but they were both SaaS companies, not healthcare, not anything. And we're like, well, you know what? We should continue with this because they're the only two ones. And then essentially, because I didn't have enough money left, we kind of got back to Moscow again. And then we tried to like make a few calls with them. We had one call and it was dragging. It was not really, honestly, it was nothing real with that. And we were like, okay, what do we do? Well, where is the majority of debt? Obviously banks. Like banks should be the best ones. So we went to f6s.com, and we applied to literally every accelerator, banking corporate accelerator in the world. We got into 5, but only one of them were paying for the tickets because we didn't have any money to do anything. And there was Nordea, which was the largest Scandinavian bank in Scandinavia, Nordea Bank. And they paid for our tickets. We flew there and we got in, they invested the first one, actually.
This was prior to YC, obviously, right?
This was prior to YC.
And Levon, what was your sales pitch like?
Sales pitch was essentially doing the same thing, machine learning algorithms to increase collections for the bank. That was pretty straightforward pitch. The pitch was nice, but we learned the hard way. So we were one of the only ones in the batch who actually signed up Nordea Denmark for a processing of potentially 120 million euros or so in debt. And we were like, everybody got excited because we were just crushing it there. But to be honest, what we still have been doing every night, working from, we were living in Helsinki, between Helsinki and Stockholm. Every night we were working and trying to sell to US market because we knew that we want to get to the States back because that would be potentially the largest market for us. And we kind of got it again with gusto, a little bit with, I mean, not with gusto officially, but with some people within gusto, and we kind of like, yeah, it was interesting, we met and they definitely had some problem. So, and I decided to apply to YC. And essentially I said, you know what, let's just try it out. So we got invited. From YC. YC paid for the trip again. So we said, yeah, sure, we're going. and yeah, we got in. I don't know if you guys want to to get to know about this YC interview, but we were one of the rare ones who got re-interviewed that same day. So the first person who was really interested was Sam Altman.
Who is Sam Altman? Just kidding.
Uh, yeah, like I don't know, just some random guy, honestly. Like,
Okay.
yeah. So Sam was. I don't think that we were in his kind of. We were his cup of tea a little bit because he was more focused on like consumer. I would say moonshot businesses were definitely more B2B, classic sales. And then we got re-interviewed by Michael and Adora, and we got it essentially. Yeah, and then everything obviously changed during YC and after YC. We also learned, which was interesting, that Nordea could not really work with us because they didn't want to. They realized that if we will build the product, and if that product would have worked, they would have to let go a lot of people, and they can't do it in Denmark. And they're like, oops, probably not a good idea. So that was funny. And yeah, I mean, during YC, we pivoted probably 5 or 6 times in terms of the customer segment, and then so simultaneously with YC experience, I got my first kid born, and we were naturally going through a lot of pediatricians, and I just started talking to pediatricians. Honestly, it's like, hey, do you have this problem? Like, and they're like, yeah, sure, we do. No one pays us. And they're like, oh, interesting. Tell me more. And I think we were able to validate with like 4 or 5 different doctors, specifically pediatricians, like our pediatricians, literally. And they all had this problem. And then I remembered my experience from like, oh, shoot, yeah, it makes sense. Like I was going through the same thing, and I could see why people are not paying. So I think that this is an interesting combo for me where I kind of had a lot of experience already before running a company for collections. I went through this experience myself as a consumer, and then I learned and validated as well. We're able to validate it with the market. Obviously, I got lucky.
Levon, you also did the MBA. It seems like your focus or the thesis maybe while doing MBA was this as well, right?
No, not really, honestly. Like MBA was more just a fun time for me to kind of relax and learn a little bit. Try to fix the mistakes that I've done running previous company, I guess. Honestly, that was the reason why I decided to go for MBA, because like one of the close people to me that was working with me, who was like I would say like a mentor before, he died unfortunately, and we were not able to figure out some stuff that was really important for the business, and I never had a business education before as well. That was the reason why I was like, oh well, Crimea happened and the company's probably not gonna do well. It's a great time for me to kind of get a sabbatical in the form of an MBA, essentially. Yeah, so that's how we started collectively in YC. And you were asking me about enterprise sales, right?
So, like from your story, I understood that you are not a like deep technical person, right? You are more a non-technical founder. So, how hard is to build and be a co-founder of a deep tech company, like without a technology background? And many people are really curious about it because not all the founders have that like technical background.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I would love to call it deep tech what Collectly is. I don't think it's like a true deep tech company. Like OpenAI is a true deep tech company, obviously, like, you know, Crisp is, but probably not really Collectly. Collectly is more a payments company, to be honest. And like billing and payments software company, like SaaS company. That's what truly Collectly is. But answering your question about how difficult it is for not technical founders to actually start doing, well, first of all, when I was in my high school, I did some coding lessons, and I could not code myself probably really ever, but I can write SQL queries, and I understand the logic in general of how, you know, just like databases work, how the you know, I don't want to say how to write a code, but like how to build a technical product, because I actually was doing this before in my previous company. And so and but the real answer is you just learn fast, honestly. Like I was excited about building software in general, and I think that me me and my co-founder, we get very good along, you know, up to this moment. And he's a great engineer, amazing co-founder as well. He was an ex-professor for computer science at VMK MGU in Russia. Very knowledgeable guy. Did a lot of startups, and you know, he taught me as well. Very like was super helpful. Taught me how to do in a startup manner. You know, how to build software in a startup manner sort of approach. Um, so I don't think that I had actually a lot of technical challenges. Where we did really have challenges is with the basics, and I think that those are the most crucial ones. It's like you talk, you know, a lot of people they do like lean business canvas, like who's the customer, what's your channel, you know, what's the unfair competitive advantage, like all those things. What's the pain point you're trying to solve? I think that this is the most important part if it's not a deep tech. If it's a deep tech where the technology solves everything, you know, again, OpenAI type of example, that's a little bit different, probably, but I would still think the fundamentals remain because it's business, right? I had a very hard time running my previous company where we literally had cash flow gaps probably every month, to be honest. And I learned the hard way what means not being able to pay your employees on time. And I never ever want to have this ever again in my life. Like that is extremely painful, extremely painful. And I was living like that for 7 years, to be honest. So yeah, because I was trying to almost like I was always fundraising because we were growing, and I was always literally like trying to find some money from out of thin air, like all the time. And it's not, and when I got in the States and I learned how the startups and how VCs work, I was like, holy shit, someone will actually give me a lot of money so that there's no cash flow gaps. Wow, that's like fantastic. Um, so yeah, learned the hard way, and that kind of I think saved us from failing soon or failing fast, to be honest. Uh, because I don't want to sound rude or anything, but for me, if a startup does something, there's only one person who should pay for it, and it's the customer. That's kind of my personal ideology of it's not an investor, it's not a founder. If you're building something valuable, there should be people who are ready to pay for it, and those are the customers. Investors and all that, that's a totally different type of people. It's, you know, it's not a revenue conversation. If you can find people early enough, especially who are ready to pay for it, then you should probably fix this first before, trying to scale the business or spend your VC round on this. At least that's what I'm trying to do. That's what we're trying to do.
Can you tell a little bit more? You mentioned like there was entirely different life before YC and after YC. Like what changed in terms of how you think about the business, how you talk to the customers, how you sell?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, YC has this like 50 truths about startups. You probably saw a few like posts around that. And
Just a small interruption here. We are covering all those 30 truths during our podcast. Probably we cover already like around 8 or 10. And I think it's very great list of advices, and we go deep in each of them and try to connect with our own experiences.
yeah, I would say that I would probably agree with 95% of those truths. And one thing is to read and understand, like one thing is like to know these truths. Another thing is to understand what that means and implement it into the real world. That's a very different skill set. And a lot of, I talk to a lot of startups who are going through Y Combinator school, which is not like the batch, but it's more of like, that remote education sort of approach. And I know that some people are struggling to actually understand what that means. And I think that is really important. And honestly, those truths are universal in almost any business to me, honestly. Like maybe even construction business would, a lot of those rules would apply to them, and not only specifically software. It's just the truths about, like, the hard truth about the business, essentially. But answering your question, um, some of the things that we learned was probably, do things that don't scale was an interesting truth. Obviously, we all know this and we all understand what that means, but it's really hard to talk to people, especially in 2017 and probably in even before that, who got successful, but who were starting from like day one. And a lot of success that you see from TechCrunch or media, friends, you don't really understand. Like, you see already scaled businesses and you start to replicate whatever you see, whatever is successful, and you think that this is the right way to you have to replicate it, you'll be successful. Totally not true, right? Like, that's usually the opposite. And because it's so hard to talk to these people and to get that knowledge of what you need to do between day zero and like day one, like that is a hard thing. And I think YC is great at this. And answering your question, I think those were the things that we learned and how our life changed before pre-YC and post-YC, is that we were able to chat with a lot of people who either were going through this or already gone through this and actually were able to summarize their knowledge and try to apply this towards our business, which is who is the YC partners.
Levon, do you mean the partners at YC or
Yeah,
your
YC partners.
cohort founders?
I mean both, because some of the YC batchmates, they were not a first time founders. They were, I'm a founder. That's my startup number 4. But YC partners for sure. Yeah, I do mean YC partners here the most.
And can you share a couple of like examples of what did you do that doesn't scale, but it was important?
Yeah, definitely. So, we had this idea, if we're going to build machine learning that will understand the consumers and basically communicate with consumers differently, like, consumer A with consumer B with consumer C, different manner. Well, it sounds all good, but how you built this, right? And the things that don't scale was whenever we got our first customer, the person who was texting literally and writing was me. And we got so much learning out of it, just incredible amount of learning. How to send those messages, what time do we need to do it? What are the potential replies and how to handle those objections? Like, what are the, like, it was just tremendous. But this is just a quick example of like, well, you're actually building a software for scale outreach, and you're actually doing your first things on your own. I think that's like one of the best things that you can do. Same with sales. I know we've been talking a little bit about, enterprise sales. One of the key things, to be honest, I think the reason why I don't want to say nailed it by any means. I don't think you can nail sales at all. But we were probably not so horrible at this, let me put it that way, is because I done every step of the funnel on my own. Started with cold calling, literally 200 calls a day, every day. Doing the first like LinkedIn outreaches, emailing, doing the first discovery calls, doing demos, selling, proposal, pricing conversations, contracting, delivering the product, supporting the product. All of this we've done completely on our own. We only had me and Max who were chatting with customers before we got to almost $1 million in ARR.
Your business, Levon, it's all B2B sales, right?
It's all B2B sales. It's all B2B sales. Yeah. We were at about probably like 800K in ARR when we decided to like hire someone for our customer success, because we already had significant amount of customers that I was not able to sell anymore, because I was doing a lot of like, tech support and customer success conversations. And we decided, well, probably, maybe this is the right time to hire for our first like hire. And the problem is that, and the thing is like, when you do things that don't scale, and when you're going through the circle all the time on your own, after you hire, you will have people, great people, like I assume you will hire amazing people who will be willing to make it in your company, but they don't know a lot of stuff yet. So my 2 cents is that you are able actually to kind of write the playbook for them. And next time, let's say a salesperson approaches you and says like, oh, they tell me X, Y, and Z. I replied A, B, and C. You know exactly what the customer meant, what needs to be answered, why they're telling you this, and all of those things. And you know how to train, how to onboard your people so that they'll be great and supportive to your customers. And I think that is actually the most important piece. So I know, and I talked to a lot of Armenian founders, we have this issue we all know about, like small market inside the country, not really being able to sell within. You can only sell externally. A lot of B2B products startups fail at this because founders are not there. They're here. They have very different culture. They have very different understanding of how things work. Not enough, sometimes even language skills. Have really hard time. Great technologies, amazing technologies, not great sales. I think that's one of the like most common issues in Armenian tech, B2B part. I'm talking only about B2B. You guys are amazing at what you do, and I don't think that there's a lot of companies actually who were able to kind of follow your path.
Just to clarify, so you were saying that you was basically the first salesperson of your company. So you have been doing in-person calls with the customers, writing the emails, meeting with them, sending the presentation, everything, right?
Everything. We had me, my co-founder, and one more engineer before we got to 800K in ARR. 3 people. And me and my co-founder were the only one who were talking to customers.
For the audience, this is called founder-led sales, and one of the advices that people get in YC is to start with founder-led sales. And as Levon said, if you are not doing the sales process yourself, it's very hard to nail it. Very hard to understand what's working and what's not. And the only way is basically to do yourself, being very, very hands.
Can we say that rule of thumb is getting to 1 million ARR completely founder-led sales? So then you can say you are ready to scale and kind of have a playbook.
No, I would not say that. I have seen. So I know a lot of friends of mine. They're running companies from Israel, and I have seen a lot of cases where companies were having even 2 to 3 million in ARR, but there's no repetitive sale. There's no playbook possible yet. And I think the key here is not the amount itself, although the amount is nice, but the amount is not really the key. The key is I have found a pattern that works and actually brings me a lot of money. Like, if you talk to or if you listen to YouTube of Michael Seibel from YC, he's talking about product market fit. What means product market fit? It's like literally when your bank account grows, like, and you're having a hard time shipping the product. I would say this is actually like very true, and people who have experienced that PMF, they know exactly what they're talking about. And people who have never experienced PMF, they will try to come up with their own definitions of a PMF always. And the thing is, the reality is that you just have more customers, like more orders that you can literally ship, and the unit economics is profitable. So your bank account grows. But I do think that in a B2B sale, depending on whom you sell to, if you're selling to like senior enterprise, let's say to an automotive manufacturers like Daimler or BMW, or companies like that, maybe this number will be different. But in an average B2B sale, whether it's like, it's SMB, small to mid market, 30 to like 25 to 35 customers is a good number if the pattern repeats. And when I say the pattern, I mean not only sales piece. Sales piece is great, but it's not, sufficient enough. You need to be able to ship the product, to sell the product, to see how the product performs, to retain the customer, and then you'll be like, okay, well, we're onto something here. Let's try to scale that. That's a different story. Scaling is a totally different.
So Levon, where are you in terms of your stage? Like, are you guys now scaling?
Yeah, so we are close to 100 people today. We have 3 different offices, and actually we're opening a 4th one. So we have an office in Yerevan, which where I'm right now. Yeah, you see there the blurred logo is there. Anyway, Institut Mirgilana, and we have about probably 15 to 16 people here. Then we have, of course, some engineers who are spread out across the Europe, especially after the events of 2022 and the war with Russian-Ukrainian war. And we have an office in LA, in Los Angeles. We have an office in New York, and we're about to open up an office in Colorado as well. In terms of the stage, like I don't want to, share some numbers for confidentiality reasons, but I would say that the next stage where we were at, we were at about 50 people, and about 10 million in run rate in revenue when we raised that Series A.
So what's your goal with this company? Do you think become like a public company at some point, or you envision a acquisition at some point?
Our goal is obviously to create a big company first, right? And I mean, revenue specifically. Um, Ideally, not to sell as long as possible while it's growing, and then to ring that bell on Nasdaq. Hopefully, that would be exciting. Um, but growing the company to whatever numbers possible is our main priority right now. Um, I would say that we we still own a very small market share, and we still have a long way to go for sure. We still have a bunch of challenges. Business, you guys all know this, like business is an exercise about solving daily shit. Literally. Like that's like every time, every day is a new thing that's not working and you're just fixing it. It's not different here, obviously. But it has some positive side effects of this, right? Like growth. So, but the goal is to be able to grow, above $1 billion in revenue.
Well, super. Thanks so much for coming today. It's amazing to have you in Yerevan.
Thank you, guys. I'm also to the entrepreneurial community of Armenia. I'm always available for anyone. A lot of people reach out to me. I'm trying to help as much as I can in terms of my time commitments. Happy to. So thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. It was great to chat with you, and well, see you probably in person soon.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Have a good one. See ya.